Nearly an entire year ago, on November 5th, 2019, the Scioto County commissioners held a public meeting where Charles Chick Lawson, the former OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, certified investigator for the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant, briefed the commissioners on the concerns involving radiation that has been detected at monitoring stations in the counties that the commissioners represent. He offered solutions and gave them some tips. To this day, they still have not acted on these suggestions.
Sir, you have something you'd like to add?
Yes, I can give you some more information on what you were discussing. You were talking about having someone who is trained in radiation, and I can make a very good suggestion for you. Dr. David Menuda, he was the chief scientist at the plant, and he and I worked together along with Jeff Wolbert on doing these things. I've got his number, name, and all that I can give to you. The other issue is this americium. This was americium that they found in Otway at the air monitor. These air monitors are not pump-driven air monitors. They are just basically a catch. Anything coming through the air, if it hits it, it's got it. If it misses it, it don't. These are not pump-driven air monitors. So it is hard to catch, but you have to realize to be able to catch americium, plutonium, you've got it in the air if you're catching it on that monitor. The other issue with this is, and here's what DOE has said. I've been going to the meetings. They are talking about ionizing radiation. Now, plutonium, americium, these things are alpha emitters, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about ingestion. When you ingest this, it turns into a totally different animal. Through the water, through breathing it in, your skin will stop alpha, okay? But if you have a cut, a scratch, if your child's on the playground where this is at and it gets stirred up and they breathe it in, there's a latency period. It will cause fatal cancer. It takes, and this is their paperwork, not mine. It takes 1/1,000,000th of a gram of plutonium to cause fatal cancer. 1/1,000,000th. You can't see it. You can't taste it. You don't know it's there. The issue with this is they found americium. Scientifically, you basically always have americium, plutonium, and neptunium travel together through the air. That monitor is 14 miles southwest. I was at the meeting with Jeff Wolbert, Dave Menuda, and the doctors at the Piketon Health District, and Matt Brewster, a couple months back when they admitted that. That was found in 2018. DOE didn't release it until they were forced to. Now, to me, that is significant. Zahn's Corner, when they found the plutonium, americium, U-234, U-235, U-234 is inside the school, airborne. They found that in 2017, did not release it until it got found out and leaked out until 2019. They are purposely setting on this information. They are hiding it from the community. Now, Brian knows that I'm involved in a very large case. I do nuclear investigations, and I'm also a complainant in the case. Some of the things I cannot tell you, some of them I can. And I will say this right now, and this is the way I've been told I have to say it. In my opinion, this is being ran as a criminal enterprise. Now, in the meeting Saturday at Piketon, and I don't mean nothing derogatory about this, these meetings I've been going to, I don't see the county commissioners at these meetings. and I feel that they need to, because these meetings is giving insight, and you're going to be hearing things that the people are saying. This is not, and no offense, I agree with what you say. There is legacy issues here on the radiation, but we now have new issues. And with, if you remember when I gave you that isotope list that was brought in here, the significance of that is from the 1995 Lawrence Livermore radioactive isotope identification. Because of an issue with transuranics from Russia that got brought into here, this is new, and it got shipped out to another place. They had, USEC was trying to deny it was theirs, so they had to prove it was. They went to every facility in the United States, took samples. I think it was marked Exhibit 4. I got so many numbers in my head. That's why it said Exhibit 4 on it. That was what they used, Dr. Kettering, to prove that the radiation that they found outside the plant site came from our plant. Because every one of these isotopes at each one of the plants, even though it's like plutonium U-239, U-238, neptunium 237, these items, because of the process at each plant, adds a little bit different chemical, a little bit different process, so they can identify it. It is not fallout, and it is not natural background. DOE is lying about that, and I will say that publicly. They are flat out lying. They have not been honest with the commissioners in the towns, in the cities, in the counties. They are putting the children at risk. With this being airborne, I did contact Northwest School and let their superintendent know. I contacted Valley School. And here's something I would like the commissioners to be proactive about. For some reason, DOE is now going to run all of this through Pike County Health. I don't know why that decision was made, because it's two different counties. And now we know it's here. It's not supposed to be here. And it's not minuscule because it's airborne. That changes everything. You guys need to get with them and get Northwest School on the list to be checked for contamination. You need to get Valley. Valley, I'm trying to think of my mind here, the wheel charge, I think Valley would be 12 miles. And I'm thinking Medford somewhere between around 13. They go as the crow flies, is how they measure. The 15-mile mark is at Clay Overpass. Now, to give you an example of how far plutonium can travel, out at Rocky Flats in Colorado, they had an accidental release. It was a major release. Got airborne. And we've got a lot of hills around us. Everybody knows it. Out there, they've got mountains around them. They found plutonium 100 miles away. That should give you a basis. This issue, we have had contact with the Judiciary Committee in Washington on this very incident from Saturday. We've talked with the Corps of Engineers. The reason we did, we think there's been, we believe, possibly violations on the permits. One, they were finding plutonium, americium, neptunium, U-234, U-235, Big Beaver Creek, running into the Scioto River, coming down into the Ohio River. That is an issue that is going to affect us. The cleanup, and another thing that came out, and matter of fact, Channel 10 News was at that meeting Saturday and filmed it, and they also live streamed it on YouTube, so it could probably be found there also. These issues are going to end up being a lot bigger than what they seem right now because of the documents that we hold and now our lawyers hold. There will be, There will be action taken very soon. And when this comes out, the people of Scioto County, Piketon, also Jackson, they are going to be very infuriated when they see what happens. We know that material was released into the air. It was done on purpose. And now what they're talking about on the X326 building, now here's part of the lie they're telling. I'm just going to call it that, a lie. Fabrication, misleading, whatever you want to call it. That building, that entire building, the pipes contain weapons-grade material. Anything above 20% is considered weapons-grade for nuclear weapons. It goes from 20% down to 97%. In some spots, we had 98%. I actually worked there. The DOE, in a meeting that I was at in Waverly, put out, said, well, we only had weapons grade at the south end of 326. That's not true. Everybody that worked there knew that that wasn't true. The pipes still have material in them. The material is still in there. The radiation, they're calling it yellow cake. It is not yellow cake. It has solidified because when they turn the heat off in the process system, it solidifies back to a solid. Part of the problem, they're cutting those pipes with torches, which heats it back up to a gas. So now it's leaking out. They have put holes in the walls of the asbestos. They open the doors. They let it out. Now what they're saying they're going to do, because the outside, that trans side is all asbestos, they've rigged up sprayers, water sprayers, and they said what we're going to do is we're going to spray it. And we're going to start checking the walls down. Then we're going to go in there and start tearing those pipes out. When you start tearing them pipes out, the amount of contamination that comes out of there is going to be horrible for the communities. Whichever way the wind blows, you're going to get bad. That is a fact. Now, what they said, because someone questioned, said, well, we don't think that's a good way to do it. So they said, well, gee, we'll dig a moat around the X326 so when we spray the water, because there will be contamination, radioactive materials will be coming out of that building, and they're going to try to catch it with water. In the nuclear industry, you have what is called a criticality. We've had people die from criticalities. And to stop that from happening, every 55-gallon drum that they would have to put trash in, because they used to pour radioactive solutions into those. They had a 55-gallon drum. The guy was cleaning what they call small parts, had uranium on it, enriched uranium. They told him dump it into the 55-gallon drum. When it reached a certain level, it blew up on him. Massive criticality, flash flew, killed him. So after that, every 55-gallon drum in these facilities, they go up 1 inch and they drill holes all the way around. That keeps liquids from building up inside. But now they're going to build a moat around the 326 and spray water to catch the radioactive material and the asbestos. There's thousands of pounds of material in those pipes. Now what do you think is going to happen when that starts getting out? There's also HF, hydrofluoric acid, in there. Do you know what happens with hydrofluoric acid?
Hydrogen fluoride, excuse me.
Yeah. Hits water, it burns you up.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes?
The waste disposal facility that they're building, you haven't heard anything about that lately. How is that coming along? Are they finished with that? Are they still building it? And what's the progress on that?
Well, they put out in that meeting, which is on YouTube, that the rubber liner that they're putting in is rolling up. They're having problems. Now, here's something else that we brought out in, see, we talked about it in November 2014, and then they had a meeting, I can't remember the date after that, when they showed the model up there at Waverly. One of the questions I asked in that public meeting, I said, with this rubber liner that's supposed to last 1,000 years, they will be putting plutonium-239, 238, 240. And the list that I gave you lists all those isotopes. That's in those pipes. That's going in the hole. That is not low assay material. That's high assay material. The rubber liner they used at another facility, they ran into a problem. It started leaking. Well, when they started researching it, the groundhogs were burrowing through it, and it was leaking out. Now, I'm not trying to be silly when I say this. How are you going to stop the groundhogs around here burrowing through it? Now, if you read the record of decision, it's 5,000 pages. In that, DOE, and they lied in their commit, I'm going to call it that, because in there they said the bedrock was not cracked. If you read the addendums in there, it says the bedrock is cracked both vertically and horizontally. And also, under Ohio EPA law, you cannot be within 200 feet of any type of aquifer with radioactive waste. They paid Ohio EPA $3.5 million, and they gave them a waiver. There will be 20 feet from the Taze River aquifer. That's where my water from Lucasville comes from. Now, folks, and I'm dead serious, that river flows all the way to Virginia. The people should be up in arms about this. This is bad science. There's no way you can justify what they're doing. And if you go a step farther, Google, this is how ridiculous it is, Google radioactive waste sites of the United States. Guess where every one of them are? Close to an aquifer. Ask them about Snake River. Ask them about the Aladala. They're getting polluted. What are we going to do for the people downstream in the Ohio River here? It takes special equipment to get radiation and these particles out of the water. The cost of that is monumental. And you can't pay for it. I can't afford a $1,000 a month water bill. I mean, these are things that have to be discussed. It has to be looked at. The county commissioners in these 5 counties around this should get together and demand an injunction and have a finding of fact with scientists other than just their own.
After that meeting, a call to actions put out a video showing the evidence of radioactive contamination in Scioto County. 2 days later, at another Scioto County Commissioners meeting, Mike Crabtree and Brian Davis get up in arms, claiming that journalism is dead, and other remarks. And as you'll see, Mr. Crabtree still tries to blame the radioactive contamination in his county on nuclear weapons testing fallout. Watch.
I want to make a remark, too, about something else like yesterday that went on here. You know, we all have had relatives, we've had friends, people that we know that have worked at the A plant over the years. I've had several friends who not only I went to school with that are dead now that have worked there, and one of them died early in life from cancer. He was overexposed to some of that stuff. I had other friends that from around Pike County and different places that I knew that have long since died because of what goes on at the A plant. And there's groups out here now that are trying to do something about that. But, you know, my biggest concern is that a lot of these people that are trying to put pressure on the county commissioners and bad-mouthing everybody else because they're not doing enough are some of the same people that worked there for years and drew a paycheck, and when the paycheck was no longer coming in, then they decided to attack the Department of Energy. Well, I think the Department of Energy knows the dangers that were there, and I think the people that worked there knew the dangers that were there. But it wasn't much of a concern, and they never said anything until they got away from there. I don't know why it is that they were on the inside looking out. They knew all this stuff a lot better than we did, and yet they were silent as long as they got a paycheck. And for that reason, I don't take that very kindly. Now, it's everybody's fault that the A plant is there. It's everybody's fault that there's cells being dug up there. But the people that worked there for all those years that were silent, how much of the burden's on them? I just take offense to that they come in here and they try to pressure the commissioners into trying to strong-arm the Department of Energy to do something they're not going to do, obviously. And all they're going to do is spend whatever money they can spend to do the best they can with what they've got up there. And if you put too much pressure on them, they're going to do nothing. And a lot of those cells that were built years ago didn't have any kind of lining. They had nothing. They're still seeping into the soil. They've been seeping into the soil for 30, 40, 50 years. And, the best we can do may be only the best we can do. But we all have concerns there. We've lost people that we care a lot about. And I don't know how many of y'all in here, but I think just about everybody in Scioto County knows somebody or is related to somebody that worked there, and many of them that have suffered from that. And we do care. We do care. But all we can deal with is the information that we get, what's reliable, what's not reliable. And we can write letters. We can do resolutions until we're blue in the face, but you cannot force the Department of Energy to do any more than what they have the funding to do. With that, I'll shut up and let anybody else that wants to talk. Ron, if you got anything.
Yeah, I do. And I'll just be honest with you, I'm pretty angry about this. Overnight, there was a report that was posted on Scioto County Daily News saying that the commissioners are corrupt and failed to inform the public about radiation contamination in Otway, Ohio. Reading some of the responses from that, I just, it's clickbait is what it is, okay? And it's designed by people to get a reaction. All right, so it was brought up in our last meeting about this radiation monitor that went off in Otway. And when it went off, this happened in 2017, by the way. We was informed about it 2 months ago by a private citizen. He was in the meeting. And what we did was, this is how we reacted. It was interesting that we heard it from a private citizen and not from the Pike County Health Department, okay, nor from our own health department. So what did we do? Well, I'll tell you what I did, and I said in the meeting. I contacted our health commissioner, Mike Martin, and I said, do you know about this? No. He promptly contacted Mr. Brewster up in Pike County Health Department. All right. I'm going to read this to you just to show everybody that this is the kind of information that nobody wants to hear, because the truth sometimes is complicated, and it's easier to believe something that isn't true than to research the facts before you start spouting off. Okay? Okay, what was caught on that monitor was what's called neptunium. It can be naturally occurring. People need to understand that there was there was atomic tests everywhere, all over. I mean, out west for years and years and years in this country. You will find californium, neptunium. There's all kinds of different EMs that are in the environment. The federal permissible level for that is 0.18. All right. The samples, once, this happened once in 2017. The reading was 1,000 times lower than the federal permissible level. That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying we should have reported to the public. Now, you just heard me say that it's naturally occurring. So that monitor could be set up anywhere and possibly a hit could happen. Anywhere. Downtown Portsmouth. Okay? 1,000 times below. That's what they're saying. But that's the detail that nobody wants to talk about. We just want to say, radiation contamination, should have told the public. It's in the ACER report from 2017 from the Annual Site Environmental Report. It's called the ACER report. That is readily available to the public at any time. End of discussion. I'm just appalled that this kind of thing can happen and people just, they're corrupt. Literally calling us corrupt politicians because we didn't tell the public.
Well, the permissible level was 0.18 and the actual level
Point
was
zero 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 0.00015.
But what these commissioners fail to mention is plutonium-239-240 being detected in the soil at levels much higher than what they were talking about. How did that get there, commissioners?
Okay, so let's go a step further. Okay, and we'll discuss just how, there is a third-party testing being done now as a result of these complaints that is being paid for by the Department of Energy, a third party that the group that's complaining about the cell, the group complaining about the contamination, that group and the Department of Energy apparently has agreed upon this third party to do this testing. We support that. Okay? That is being administered, we understand, by the Pike County Health Department. In my conversations with Dr. Martin, have repeated my interest in that the Scioto County Health Department needs to be very involved in that study. We need those results. They need to know who we are, and we need someone watching and monitoring that. Okay? Just like Pike County, just like DOE, we need to be involved. And I reiterated that this morning to our health commissioner, and he is. They are doing that. Okay? But again, in response to a 0.00015 reading in 2017, you know what? There are things that, as commission, we hear stuff all the time. You have to verify information. You have to qualify it, quantify it, and then if you find out to be true, okay? Sam, someone could have told me you were a bank robber yesterday. I'm going to let the public know you're a bank robber. We know you're not a bank robber, but I'm going to ask you, are you a bank robber?
Kind of a rough month.
But we confirmed it. He's not a bank robber, okay? You have to take things seriously, but at the same time, you have to trust but verify. You have to verify information before you go out with it. Because what can happen, as in this case, someone is now believing that there is radiation in Otway, Ohio, and everybody's going to die. Now, come on. Yes, I'm mad because, number one, to call us corrupt because we were taking the measured steps to verify. You just don't throw stuff out there and hope it sticks to the wall. And yeah, I'm mad. And it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. You don't do that. Journalism is dead, apparently. If you're not going to verify information before you put it out there, okay, then journalism is dead. I mean, you just don't throw it out there for someone to hopefully, oh, it's true. Everything's true. It's not true. So we're doing our best to verify it. We've been working on this for years. We work on this every year. And we talk to the Department of Energy. I actually talked to the Department of Energy about this issue. And they told me the same thing. It's in the site report. Read it. Okay? I mean, they don't make up these readings. They don't make up these numbers. Some will say they do. But they're actually, I mean, this reading is what it is. I mean, I don't know. But a little upset today. because we do our best to protect the citizens of this county, and then someone comes out with this garbage and says these things. It's just wrong. It's just wrong, and it tells you where we're at in journalism today. And I'm not saying that about the individuals that are in this room. You're sitting in this room right now asking questions, and you report the news, okay? But apparently, people can just take something out of thin air and turn it into something that it's not. And that's not right. I've said enough.
Well, they have done nuclear testing all over the United States and all over the world, actually. And when they set off all those bombs and stuff, the air flows around the world. For people that are pilots, and I am a pilot. I've not been flying lately, but back in the day when Mount St. Helens erupted, I don't know if you all remember that. Some of you are maybe too young to, but at that time I was doing a fair amount of flying, and for the longest time there was this reddish haze at a certain level that if you was flying up above 3,500 feet, you could see that, and it was just, I guess, atmospheric dust from that eruption that was still in the atmosphere for, I believe it was more than a year, that I could still see that red cast in there on a clear day. I mean, if it was real cloudy, you didn't see it so much, but on clear days, you could see that. And I don't know. The air flows around the Earth. We have the jet stream. Sometimes it's about 170 miles an hour, and more or less. And the people that travel by jet, when they take you across the ocean, they usually try to fly where it's favorable, and they get that tailwind, and it helps speed up your arrival. So, as long as we got air flowing around the Earth, you're going to have that mixed up with everything else, and they claim you can get trace amounts of that just about anywhere you are. So I don't know. I'm not an atmospheric scientist or anything, but I do know that when things get blasted off into the atmosphere, it stays for some time.
Speaking of blasting things into the atmosphere, according to a May of 2000 independent investigation at the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant by the Office of Oversight, Environment, Safety, and Health, a process known as midnight rocket was performed at midnight while the towns around the plant slept. They would purposefully vent uranium hexafluoride and transuranics into the atmosphere. They would also use high-powered jets to vent these radionuclides out into the atmosphere. And these were done on purpose, and there was no record-keeping system to show how many times and how frequently these intentional jettings and midnight rockets had occurred. 1 week later, on November 14th, 2019, even more remarks were made by county commissioners.
I want to make another little remark because there's been a lot of misinformation and stuff getting out and everything. And there's been a whole lot of things said about the A plant. And that being said, I was misquoted a few times on that. The remarks that I made the other day was that, that we've all lost friends, relatives, or someone close that we know up at the A plant. I never mentioned any names because, to my knowledge, I've had a brother and my father worked at the A plant at one time, but neither one of them were affected by it. But what I would like to say is that, the A plant's getting an awful lot of attention because of some of the hazards that's been there. But what people don't realize is there's a lot of people that work for law enforcement. We have a lot of sheriff's deputies. We have a lot of police officers. We have people that work dangerous jobs. And they know that, and they go to work every day anyway. And firemen, there's been a lot of people killed in fires that were trying to save lives and that. And a lot of times, they go unnoticed. construction workers, I worked around construction for years and years, and I was looking in the paper at one time, and there was an article that construction was one of the worst jobs in America, not because of the pay or anything, but because there's a lot of people get killed in accidents and things like that. We had, down at the Ford plant, we had a guy that got crushed by a 16 grader. We had a fellow that got between one of those, it's a spreader box of a thing, and a dump truck, and he got crushed. And there's been a lot of people over the years, over 34 years, that got killed from cars getting behind barricades and everything else. But the thing that I've noticed about people, it doesn't matter where they work. Even the folks that worked up there and claimed that, it was a hazardous place to work, they went to work anyway. And one thing that everybody has in common when they work a dangerous job is the fact that they know they've got a family, they know they got kids that have to eat, and they run the risks. Even the people that serve in the Army, you go in there and you don't know whether you might be one of the unlucky ones that don't come home. I spent 3 years in the Army. I was one of the lucky ones. But the reality is what it is. People go back to work and they do whatever their duty is, and they take care of their families because they care about them, and they take those risks because that's just the way it is. And there's a lot of jobs that are dangerous, and the only way I guess you could be safe is if you're in a bunker somewhere that is bomb-proof, but, people run risks every day. But working for a company for 30-some years and then going around and taking stabs at people out here think that we should get on board to help clean up a situation that's been here since long before some of us were born, it's not our fault. It's not as much our fault as it is the folks that worked there for all them years, and as long as they've drawn a paycheck, they went back in there knowing it was dangerous. They drew their paychecks, and they never said anything, never made a peep until they was no longer employed by that company. Now, I'm not saying there's anything right about what the A plant done, and I can tell you this, that when you sue the government, you sue each and every one of us here that's paying taxes, because the government, the revenue they get is out of our pockets. And so when you sue the company you work for, or when you sue the government or anything, a lot of times you're suing your neighbor next door. Maybe a little bit at a time, but that's where the money comes from. It don't come out of the president or Congress's pockets. They're drawing money from the government too. They're getting your money and your tax dollars just like everything else. So every time that you sue somebody, somebody pays for it. If you sue a company, the people that work for that company, in one way or the other, they pay for it. So, my thoughts are, nothing is going to change in this world. There's still going to be people every day getting up, going to a job where sometimes it's not fit to be out in the weather working. And they're still going to do that because they need that paycheck and they've got to pay their bills, and they're responsible individuals. And I done it myself. I had a few close calls, but I'm one of the lucky ones again. I never got killed, but my boss and myself had a car, got between the barricades one time and come just inches from running over us. Well, those kind of things happen. But we went to work the next day. And the thing is, we do a lot of things, we take a lot of chances in life, but we can't turn around 30 years after the fact and say, it's their fault I worked there 30 or 40 years and I'm in the shape I'm in. If you knew the dangers when you was there, you should have been a whistleblower back in the time when it really made a difference. The A plant's out of business now. I hear so much from that stuff. We all don't like what's in the ground up there, but there's very little we can do about it. The Department of Energy is going to make the final tally on that, and I'm getting tired of some of that crap. Now, I'm speaking for myself, so I don't want to saddle these guys with that responsibility, but I'm through. So if you guys want to have anything you'd like to say, go ahead.
I just object to being called corrupt whenever we're just trying to be responsible commissioners and check things out before we make statements. And so that, I did take objection to that. We work very hard to make sure to do the best for our community and take care of their welfare. So as responsible as responsible commissioners, we may not speak out on something immediately. It goes out in the news, but we do check it out, and then we will address it. So with that being said, my father died. He worked out there since the plant opened, and when he was 80, he got cancer. It was so new; it only had been named for 10 years. So I have had brothers-in-law that have passed. They worked out there since the 60s, and I've had several brothers-in-law that have died from cancer. I'm sure attributed to their work there, and so I think we're all know someone who has been affected by the dangers out there. But let us do our job, and let us do it the correct way for you.
Well, I've made multiple comments, and I'll just simply say this, that I think it is important in our society today that journalism is held to a high standard, as it always has been, and that it is important that before information is disseminated, put out for public consumption, that sources, data, information is researched, and that it is fully transmitted to the public, meaning anyone can make a statement, anybody can make an accusation, but journalism calls for research, digging into the facts, and that happens all the time. But in this case, and really what really started all of this was an accusation that there was a hit on a radiation monitor in Otway, and that somehow the people of Scioto County were at great risk because of that. We pushed back on that statement. The statement that was made by Ms. Colley that somehow we were corrupt because we hadn't told the people of Scioto County about a reading that was 10,000 times lower than the permissible level, when our health commissioner had said there's nothing to worry about here. I don't think that creating a health panic would be constructive in any way, shape, or form for the people of Scioto County, and I question people who want to create such. Now, with that said, is there contamination at the 8 plant? Absolutely. We know this. Everybody knows this. We know more than most people because we've read the reports, and we've sat down with the Department of Energy, and we've talked to the officials, and we've had conversations with other government officials in Pike County. There's a real problem up there. And the DOE is doing their best, and has been for several years, employing thousands of people and trying to get that cleaned up through decontamination and demolition, the D&D project. Thousands of our citizens are working up there right now trying to get that cleaned up. Basically the accusation is somehow saying that we're in cahoots and covering things up and everything else simply is not true. It's not true.
What do you think? Do you trust the commissioners? Is plutonium showing up in the soil okay with you as a citizen around the Portsmouth plant?